It's a Drama, coming to you from Taranaki, New Zealand.
Hello.
Daddy, I love him!
Mother thanks you.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Hello and welcome to the It's a Drama podcast. I'm Liz.
And I'm Brian.
And today we've got a special person that we're going to interview about working in New Zealand. And he's sitting right here.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about working in New Zealand as a tradie.
Yep.
And we've had a lot of people, especially now, a lot of nurses coming over, and because of on the
Yeah, what was the name of that lady who's just come over?
Katie. And
yep.
yeah, just nurses coming over, and also tradies wanting to come to New Zealand and work and wondering how that is going to, how that's going to play out once they get to New Zealand. So I thought I'd interview the best tradie I know in my life and give you an idea of what it's like to be working in New Zealand as a tradie.
Yep.
And yeah, so I hope you enjoy this interview with Brian. And,
I've not been interviewed on the podcast before, I don't think.
No, you haven't.
No. Yeah,
so ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Oops.
So Brian, what is your trade?
So my trade is, I came to New Zealand with the trade of being a plumber. My trades are plumbing, gas fitting and electrical. So I was licensed in the UK in all three, but in New Zealand, I'm licensed only in plumbing. I'm a certified plumber or a craftsman plumber, craftsman gas fitter, certified gas fitter.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm licensed to do. I can contract and do some electrical work if I've got someone watching me. But
okay, we should have maybe just said as well that in case you're new to the podcast, that we emigrated to New Zealand 12 years ago from Bath in the UK, and we got over here on the
skilled migrant
visa because Brian's trade was on the
long-term skilled shortage list. So
it's a good job you knew these things,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, because I'm not prepped for that. But
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I think it'll be ingrained in my life forever.
Okay, how long have you been? Is that umbrella going to be all right?
I think
'Cause
it's
we're
okay. It's
sitting
really
outside.
windy and there's an umbrella trying to keep the sun off us so we can film.
How long have you been in your trade? How long have you been being a plumber?
Well, I'm 58 now, and I started when I was 16. I did actually.
Really?
I did plumb when I was 14 with my dad, because he was a heating guy as well. So it's what, 40 years.
40
over.
years.
Is it 40 years? 40 years. 40 years.
Yeah.
In trade. Yep.
Okay, showing your age there, Brian. Showing your age, right? Okay.
Yep.
How did you find a job in New Zealand?
How did I find a job?
Yeah.
I went on. It was Trade Me, and just on the jobs just search for jobs on Trade Me, and a job in Wellington came up, and a job in New Plymouth came up. I phoned the guy in Wellington, spoke to him because we didn't really care where we lived when we first came to New Zealand, just for the fact that I needed it so I could get the residency. And I spoke to the guy in New Zealand, and all he kept talking about, do you know anything about ducts pipe systems? And I'm like, no, never heard of it in my life. DUK. It goes, because that's a big piping system over here that they put in the houses in the 1980s, and they've all failed, and you just go in and upsell every time. And I'm like, say again, what have I got to do? He said, when you go in and you just go to fix one leak, we want you to replace all the pipes in the house. And I just thought,
It's a bit dodgy, isn't
yeah,
it?
I didn't really like that.
No, you didn't like it.
I was just thinking, yeah, I can do that. And I spoke to him a couple of times, and just to try and get more of an idea of him. And then I spoke to the guy in New Plymouth, a guy called Tony, and he was just, he seemed a solid guy, and he sort of said to me, what are you coming over here for? And I said, well, change your lifestyle, somewhere to bring the kids up. And he said, well, it's not the land of milk and honey.
Okay, can I just interrupt? So you
Yep.
find this job on
Yep.
Trade Me, and how did you get his phone number to phone him up? How did that happen?
You just, you inquire about the job, and he emailed me back with his telephone number. We arranged to have a call, which obviously it would have been probably nearing midnight in the UK, and 10 or 11 o'clock over here, depending on what time of year it was. And I sat and spoke to him for an hour, and he just said, well, you sound like the perfect sort of person that we need. So he said, send me your CV, sent it out to him, and he phoned me back after about a week, didn't he? And said, yep, you've got the job if you want it, and you know, if you need a hand with your residency. And I said, well, I'll need a letter off you to say that you're employing me, and a contract of employment. So yeah, it was very nerve-wracking. It sounds a lot easier just saying, hey, it was a phone call, but when you're actually trying to sell yourself on the phone, it's not that easy sometimes. And with that, that led that if I was going down the plumbing route, then I had to have an interview with the plumbing board, and I spoke to the chairman of the plumbing board for
The bumming board.
The bumming board. For about an hour, he questioned me on plumbing for half an hour. Obviously, you don't need to know the regulations here the same, but it's just those general things, you know, about, you know, if there's a waste pipe going across a bedroom floor, what type of fall is it? How much fall? What if you can't get the fall? What's the calculation that you should be using?
Was he trying to catch you out?
No, he was. I was overthinking it, and he was just saying, just really basic questions, just keep it basic. And then half an hour on gas fitting as well. So,
Do you remember that he said to Brian, actually, and I just remembered when you said that, he said, Brian, can I just give you some advice? Stop overthinking it.
Yep.
There you go, Brian.
There you go, you see.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of advice for you there, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's...
Also, tell what you did when you got the... So you'd had the interview and you spoke to Tony and he was like saying, oh yeah, you sound like a good guy. Then say what you did with the beer.
Oh, yeah. Well, he helped out with the immigration papers that I was talking about. And he said, oh mate, you owe me a beer. So I sent... I remember going on Google and looking if anybody delivered beer in the area of New Plymouth, because I'd never been here before. And I found a place called Liquorland, phoned them up and said, can you deliver some beer if I pay for it with a credit card over the phone? They were like, yes. And I said, send 2 cases of beer to Static Electrical and Plumbing, it was at the time. They don't exist anymore, which is a shame, really. And they sent 2 cases of beer around.
Yeah,
and it was on a Friday, so all the guys got a case of beer without even knowing who I was.
You know, sometimes when you just go that extra mile, I'm not saying like, you know, you should send people beer and things like that, but he really helped you out. And
to sit
it's just that extra mile, isn't it?
That immigration form about, you know, because they've got to offer you this job that they can't offer to a New Zealander. And he's got to, you know, because there is a skills shortage of plumbers, or there was at the time, there still is, then that gives you, you know, you can get a job over here in New Zealand. And so to then fill out that form and explain the reasons on that form, why I'm choosing this guy from England, it takes, you know.
Because he sent me beer.
Yeah, sent me 2 cases of beer.
Okay, so you get the job.
Yep.
It's all waiting for you when you come to New Zealand. Just quickly tell me the story of when we had arrived in New Zealand. We were living in a motel and we were walking to school with our kids, and we saw your boss driving down the road in his ute.
Well, I'd been to see him already because I hadn't really heard from him, because we took a short holiday when we first came. Well, it wasn't short, it was a 4-week holiday in New Zealand just to get to know it before we started to work. And I went in and saw him and said, hey, Tony, you know, I'm supposed to be starting for you on, I think it was the 15th of September. And he just looked at me and went, because it was around that crash of 2008, 2009. He went, does it really matter if, you know, I give you this job, because, you know, we're having a real downturn on work at the moment. And I just looked at him and said, I've given everything up to come here. You know, I've sold my house. I've got my family and kids are in the car outside. And he just looked at me and went, okay, leave it with me. And I was just thinking, oh my goodness, I've not got a job. And so all of a sudden you see the residency dissolving and everything else. And I was looking on Trade Me, and there was no other jobs around at the time. And plus as well, we'd moved to that area, hadn't we? So that's the time now. I'd taken the kids to school with Les, walking back, and his black pickup truck just turned up, didn't it? And I was like, oh no, that's Tony. He must, you know. And he did say to me, hey, I want you to come in tomorrow, bring us some tools in. I can't really offer you a job, but I've got some work at my house that needs doing, and we need some leaflets delivering as well. And I'm like, okay, anything, I'll do it.
Describe to us the first month of working as a plumber in New Zealand.
Okay, so that first month, the first few days I spent delivering leaflets.
So let me just put this into context, because you were working in Bath, you had your own business, you were on very good money. You were well respected in the city of Bath. You were known for being a very good tradesman, which you are. How did it feel being in New Zealand delivering leaflets?
Very weird, because they gave me this, it's called an econo van. It's a tiny little van, smaller than a transit or anything like that. It looks like a van, as in a flat front, and you feel like you're sitting on the windscreen. And I was just like, oh, this is the company vehicle. And I really just think, I don't care. As long as I'm being employed as a plumber. And he said, oh, go to such and such an area and deliver these leaflets. And I'm like, I haven't got a clue. And there was no real good GPS like that. There was GPS, but you know, it's like you needed an idea of where these places were, like, you know, and it was just, I was thinking, okay. So I bought a map of New Plymouth and was sitting there and trying to find out where it was. Anyway, cut a long story short, one of the other guys turned up in the vicinity and said, oh, we need you to come and help me do some work up at the college.
Was he New Zealander or was he English?
He was New Zealander, a guy called Dean. And he said, go to Myco's and I'll meet you there. And he took off like at light speed. I had to walk back to my van. I didn't have a clue where Myco's, the plumbing merchants, were. And again, I'm in my map and no phone, no GPS, you know, just like, hey, Siri, navigate to here. It's like, and I got there about 5 minutes after them. And he's like, where have you been?
Who said that? The
Dean.
guy that was, oh, okay.
Dean, yeah. And so we went and to do some work up at the thing. And this guy was hated Poms. He did. He was real old school
I don't like
New Zealander and just had a chip on his shoulder.
He was rude.
He was quite aggressive.
Yeah, he was.
But I just thought, well, I'll just be aggressive back. And and just thought, well, I've got to do what they do.
How did you do that? How did you be aggressive back? What did you do?
Grabbed hold of him.
What? You start using like big swear words and stuff?
Yeah, start effing and blinding like he was. Yeah. So,
is that true?
Yeah, it was to a degree. But you had to be, because you couldn't let him walk over you.
No.
So you have got to just stand up. And
how old was he?
He was younger than me, but only by probably 5 years. Yeah. So, you know, at the time I was, 46? Yeah, 46. Yeah.
Which leads to my next question. So did you feel as though you were talked or treated, like talked down to?
Yes.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I won't finish what I'm going to say. Go on then.
Well, it does, because the manager who was there at the time, he was just like, I didn't choose you. Tony, the owner, just said that you're coming to work for us. And I wasn't expecting another POM. So they had a Scottish guy working and an English guy working for them. They had a New Zealander and a couple of New Zealand apprentices as well. So, and they had electricians, which they were all Kiwis, apart from one. And anyway, so I'm losing my train of thought. What were we?
So were you talked? Did you feel like you were the underdog?
Yes. So the manager just turned around and said, "I don't need another POM plumber coming over here who thinks he knows what he's doing, and you quite clearly don't." Because
somebody said,
yeah, not me, but he would just tarring us with the same brush as such, like, you know, saying, you know, you obviously won't know what you're doing neither. So that side of it was kind of like, you just go, yep, okay. And
what did you say when he said that to you?
What can you say when someone says that? You know, as if like you've got to prove yourself.
Did you feel as if like you had to keep your mouth shut because you were on a trial, and you knew that if they just said, "Oh, we're going to get rid of you," that was it. That'd be the end of the residency.
But legally, you do 90 days in New Zealand, and that's your trial period anyway. That's what it was around October time, and I had to get to Christmas and keep my job, or I would have just had to get another job. But it was easier to keep the job because I had a job.
It's a good job you're an easygoing guy.
Yep. And I was earning at the time.
No. Hang on. I'm going to ask that question in a minute. It's a good job that you're an easygoing guy, because some people wouldn't take that if you turned up. And I'm surprised about that because, well, I didn't know that, to be honest. I don't think you've ever told me that. But that doesn't sound like New Zealanders to me, like, you know. But maybe he was just pushing, you know, the boundaries and maybe just going, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah, but they were old school. I mean, the manager was probably probably 4 or 5 years older than me, probably 5 years older than me. So he would have been in his 50s. So they were a little bit more old school, and that old school pom type feeling, like, as if like, oh, here you poms are coming over and taking our jobs. He was just aggressive he just didn't want me there because he knew that the work was dwindling a bit, and then all of a sudden it's another job that he's got to fill, where you become unprofitable, don't you?
And how did you feel about that? Did you ever at any point just think, oh, stuff this, I'm going back to my job in England where I was well respected?
No, because I needed to prove to myself that I could do it. So, I'd tended to work for myself a lot in the UK. I did work for companies. I had worked for companies before, in maintenance and stuff like that. So I knew what it was like to work for a company. So it's not like I've always been self-employed. But yeah, it's a hard one. I just wanted to prove to myself that, you're not going to get me on this. I'm not going to trip up on the first hurdle.
At what point did that turn? Did they start thinking, actually, this guy does know what he's doing, and he's a very nice person?
What it was, we had a job at the local technical college, which was to convert a top floor of this 4-story block building into a nursing a nursing center for nurses. So we had to strip out what was in the building company did that, and I had to put a load of sinks in, all like hospital sinks, and there was a lot of plumbing involved. And what that was this was about a month into it, because the first month that I worked, I have told you this before, I decommissioned septic tanks. Working with that guy, Dean, the guy who was quite aggressive, we drained out the septic tanks, and we were supposed to smash the lid in on them and then drill down through on the broken lid. But he didn't tell me that. What he said is you climb inside and drill the holes in, and then we smash it in and fill it up with sand. So the first 2 days going in septic tanks with poo and all sorts hanging off my head, drilling holes in septic tanks, decommissioning them because they were going onto main drains. So I'm just thinking, this is just the worst job I've ever done in my life. I've never done anything like this, and just, stopping yourself throwing up almost when you're going in, having to get hepatitis B shots at the medical center because you're working with sewage. And I'm just thinking, but again, you just get on and do it.
Don't ever let anyone tell you that moving to New Zealand was easy.
So this guy just changed his perspective to me. And then we got a job at the training college. They had a heating system, a traditional European heating system in. And they turned around and said, who's decommissioning the heating system on the top floor so we can do all this work? And they said, oh, we're getting a specialist company in to do that. And I went to see the manager and said, look, that's what I do. And he went, no, I don't want you doing that. He said, because you'll probably make a mistake. And
this guy had a lot of faith in you, didn't he?
Didn't he? Yeah. And then he said, so it's going out to the specialist heating companies. They got the specialist heating companies in, and none of them had a clue how the system worked. And I'd worked on lots of schools and things, and it was just like a replica of a UK system. And I just like, oh, I know how it works. So about 2 days later, he came and picked me up, didn't he, in the morning, and just said, jump in the car. I need to talk to you on the way to work. He said,
who's this, the manager?
This is the manager. And he said, I'm going to give you this job, but you're going to have to prove yourself. So
dun, 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 dun.
I went in there and took out all the steel pipe work and put new steel pipe work in and all this sort of stuff, and did an excellent job. And that's what got me the job as the manager. Was I went around the place and looked at it and thought the heating control systems are all over the place. And so I said I'd put a price in to revamp it, and it was about $100,000 worth of work, and they got the job.
All right. Okay. So that you proved that, didn't you?
Yes.
Right. Pay. How much were you on in the UK, and how much were you on when you first moved to New Zealand as a plumber?
So,
bearing in mind this was 12 years ago.
12 years ago, I used to charge £35 an hour.
So you were working for yourself in the UK.
Working for myself for the UK. So that's equivalent to now in New Zealand around about $70 an hour. US would be about $100.
I don't know. Just just do New Zealand dollars. Yeah, $70.
Yep.
So you won £35,
£35,
which is 70 New Zealand dollars. And that was 12 years ago.
Yep.
And then, so when you came to New Zealand, how much were you on?
$21 an hour.
Which is like £10.
Yep.
So
£10 an hour.
Took a third cut. That's right, isn't it?
Yep. And so I needed. The thing is when you come to New Zealand on your tradie, you have a license which is what they used to be called a limited license or under supervision. So that manager that we're talking about, he was a certifying plumber. So you can't work unless you're under his license. So you're on a limited license, but he is your certifying plumber. So all the work you do has to meet code and he has to sign your work off.
Right.
It's normally under visual supervision, a line of sight for those first few months. Unless you're working with another guy who is a licensed plumber who still has to work under the certifying plumber.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I came to New Zealand, I had to take 6 exams, 6 3-hour closed book exams on New Zealand regulations.
Even though you'd been a plumber since you were 14 in the UK.
Yeah. So I had to do a lot of studying. So every night towards the exams, I would study, and all weekends I would study.
So this is so that you got your certification so you could sign your own work off.
Yeah.
Right.
And that took, from getting into New Zealand, that took 3 years.
Right.
To get that.
So you were on $22 an hour.
Yep.
Once you were certified, what did your pay?
What I took my license. So this was nearly a year into. I took my what they call the licensed plumber and licensed gas fitter, 2 separate exams. I took those and passed those. So that means it would have been about 6 months after that. Then I became a licensed plumber. But I went back to because I was the manager at the time, and we had to get another certifying plumber to license my work. I was just kind of confused.
So you're now a manager at the same company that you started at.
Yep, on $22 an hour as the manager.
So hang on, what were you on before that?
$21 an hour.
They gave you $1 extra to be the manager.
Yeah, and when I said, listen, I'm going to now be licensed plumber and a licensed gas fitter, which gave me no line of sight or anything like that, they offered me an extra $50 an hour for each ticket.
Hang on.
50 cents.
I was going to say $50 an hour.
Sorry, yeah, 50 cents an hour. So I ended up, I would have been on, I think, around about $24 an hour as the manager. I think that's what it was, $24 an hour. Yeah.
So this is diversifying a little bit, but I'm just dying to know this because you and your wife must have really struggled. So how did you come to New Zealand, having been on the equivalent of 70 New Zealand dollars an hour, and come to New Zealand and live off $20 an hour? How did you do that?
Well, we did have savings that from the sale of the house in the UK, because we'd left money in the UK and we'd brought that initial 25,000 New Zealand dollars over. We'd spent about probably $10,000 of that on a car and traveling around and stuff, and so the other $10,000 we were using for rent. So we were just literally living off my wage, but we did get family tax credit because I was classed as a low income earner.
Yeah. And I remember that first year or so, 18 months that we were here, we lived so frugally, didn't we? We had a clapped out car that we've spoken about in our previous podcast episode, if you want to go and listen to that, about the mistakes that we made when we came to New Zealand. And we were living really, really frugally.
We never went anywhere. We never took a holiday, never took a day off, apart from Christmas time, and that was about it. We did a couple of, not even 2 weeks off. And we never went anywhere, did we?
No.
Yeah.
Was there any point, and again, I'm diversifying, but was there any point that you just thought, sod this is just not worth it?
Yeah, quite a few times. Like I said, I've said before, becoming a manager within, I think it was about 4 months of starting working for them. And I said, I can't be a manager. Oh, I won't call you a manager then. I'll just call you like a charge hand. So you're looking after all the guys. And I was like, well, it's a manager then, isn't it? And, because he wasn't prepared to give me much more money because he knew I was, desperate for residency and stuff Even though I'd got my residency by then, he still was under the impression that I still had to work for years for him.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, it was quite stressful because I didn't have any contacts. I didn't really know the pricing structure or how you did things. And so it was just hard. And plus, as well, doing all that studying at the same time. And plus, we were looking at thinking that we wanted to, we had to move out the rental that we were in. They'd sort of given us about 6 months notice, hadn't they? And we were looking at, right, what do we do? Do we go and rent again, or do we, for what we're renting, we could get a small mortgage and build our own house, build a kit set house, basically.
Yeah. Which we did.
Which is this house we're in now.
Yeah, and this was only ever supposed to be a stopgap, and it turned out that we've never left. So, and it was cheaper than renting, wasn't it? Because we were paying like $400 a week rent, and anyway, so that's a different story. Okay, so how was the pay? So which would you say was better, working as a plumber in the UK or working as a plumber in New Zealand?
Well, because it's heavily regulated the plumbing industry over here. I mean, when back in the 70s and 80s and 90s in the UK, you didn't need a license to be a plumber. It wasn't until around about mid-90s that you needed a license to be a gas fitter, because I think too many houses were getting blown up and things were going wrong. So they had the ACOPS system, which is a approved code of practice, and then they had the Corgi registered gas fitter, and then gas safe, and all those sort of things that you have to do now over there. Which the first one I took was in 91. So 1991. So just what I'm trying to say is, in the UK you have a lot of people messing stuff up, and then you have to go in and fix it, because it's a lot of DIY stuff that gets done, and you have to go and sort it out. So here you tend not to have that as much, because it's been done by to the code as it should be done. Yeah. So you feel a little bit more proper and more of a tradie over here than what you ever did as a plumber back in the UK. Yes, it's better working conditions here
in New Zealand.
Okay. As a plumber, I would say there's more crawling under floors and in tight spaces here than what there is in the UK.
That leads me on to my next question that I was going to ask. Is in England or in the UK, but where we were in England, there's quite a stigma attached to being a tradie, isn't there?
In England,
yeah. Like if you say, oh yeah, my husband's a plumber, it's like, well, certainly where we lived anyway in Bath, if I told anyone, oh, my husband's a plumber, they were like, oh, really?
Mine's a lawyer.
Yes, exactly. It was very, is there, I've asked you this before, but is there that same stigma attached to being no, I don't think there
just
is.
Isn't, because, here you just embrace everybody or that you're embraced better because it's a developing country. And you need tradies. Without them, we're not going to move anywhere, are we? And I just say it's not looked down on at all.
No.
If you're owner of a construction company, or you're owner of the lawyers, or the owner of the engineering company, it's all like good on you.
But do you know what I love about New Zealand as well is they will say to their kids at school, I mean, we interviewed, we haven't published that podcast yet, but we interviewed Jen. She's a New Zealander. It's a fantastic podcast, so look out for that one. It's not a video podcast, it's just an audio. But she is a New Zealander who went to live in the UK for a year. And she's telling us the differences. And the biggest difference, she says, is in New Zealand, if you leave school at 16, you have to have a trade. You're not just going to leave school. If you don't go to university, then you get a trade. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, because they know the importance of everybody needing to work.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, what was the worst thing about being a plumber in New Zealand?
I think getting used to crawling under houses, because a lot of the older style houses, the villas, as they call them, which are houses built on piles of wood or brick or concrete, whatever it is, but you can get underneath them. And some of them range from almost being able to walk underneath to having to dig out underneath a a joist so you can breathe out and get yourself into the next section. And that to me was just like, what am I doing? This is not good. And my back's not brilliant as it is anyway. And, you know, you channel out something, you dig it out, and then you realize you can crawl forward, but then you can't turn around where you're going, and you try and crawl back, but you can't get your arms back because you're in like, oh, it's just.
You wouldn't be able to do that if you were claustrophobic, would you?
Yeah. And it's, no, you can't. Yeah.
Brian used to take Sonny to work with you, didn't you? Because Sonny was homeschooled, and that's what he used to do, like once a week.
Once a week, he'd come to work with me, and there was times when none of us in the company, it was my company, could get under the floor. But Sonny was 13 or 14 at the time, a skinny little rip, and I'll do it. And he'd get underneath there and crawl over and pull gas pipes through for us.
What would you say has been your biggest challenge working as a plumber in New Zealand, or working as a tradie in New Zealand? What's been your biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge was getting the certification.
Right.
It really was, because I wanted to get back to where I was in the UK. So, like I was saying before, a lot of studying, 3-hour closed book exams. You had to get a 60% pass rate. And you took them within a week of each other. The gas, there's twice a year you could take your exams, in June and November.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had to do a common exam, which was actually about business and things, which they've been that one now and combined it a bit more. So in a common exam, there was health and safety, there was running a business. So it really prepares you for being a plumber.
Mm.
It's almost like, why do you need all that? But I can see why they do it. But
yeah.
Whether it's the same legislation now as what it was 12 years ago, because originally they would let tradies in from around the world on what qualifications you had. So you had a city and guilds type apprenticeship. You could go in and start straight away as a certified plumber, but these guys making too many mistakes and not understanding the New Zealand code, because it's combined. It's a shared code with Australia. So you've got the New Zealand building code, then you have the Australian New Zealand standards, which you have to work to, and these books are this thick.
And you weren't used to studying, were you?
No, it's going back to that classroom. Yeah, I mean, I'd done my gas safe stuff back in the UK, the Corgi stuff, sitting in classrooms for a week and being tested, but it was different. This was like full on studying.
So just to give you a quick story of what happened. So you worked for that company.
Yes.
You stopped. You took the year off to build the house.
Yes.
You then panicked. We've talked about this in the last podcast.
Yep.
If you want to go and listen to that, that's the mistakes we made when we very first came to New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
So go and listen to that one after this. Go and watch that video after that. And you went into business with another guy and started your own heating company.
Yep.
Which you did for 10 years until we packed everything in, had a midlife crisis, and traveled the world with the kids, and decided
Still never bought that Harley Davidson.
Yeah, and and the rest is history. And now we're here working as an online, doing stuff online.
Yep.
Can I just ask, when you started your own heating company, what were you getting paid then? What wage were you on?
I think it equated to, when we started the company, we did a 50-50. It was this guy's company, he started it, and then I went in, and I think we were taking around about $1,000 a week out of it.
In wages?
In wages when we first started, yes.
But now, so maybe I didn't phrase the question properly.
Right.
So if you were a qualified plumber and gas fitter now,
all right.
So if you were to go out and work now, what would you charge? How much would you expect to get?
Oh, I see what you're trying to say.
Sorry, I didn't mean how much.
No, I just thought you were talking about wages.
No.
Yeah, well, if you've got someone working for you, you can start off with that. Because, we had plumbers and gas fitters and heating guys. It was a heating company. So our top guy was on $35 an hour. The apprentices were on around about what they call minimum wage, or livable wage, which is around about, he was on around about, at the time, about $20 an hour as an apprentice. He was only 17, 18. Yeah. And anyone else would range between 20 $25 to around about $30, depending on what your skill was.
So if you were coming over to New Zealand now and you knew that you were coming over as a tradie and
Yep.
you were coming to the country and you said, okay, I'm going to get all my certification and I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to be a plumber, how much could you expect to be paid?
Yeah, once you've gone through that period of getting your certification, and you are definitely certified,
Mhm.
you'd be looking at, for a plumber, from $75 an hour up to $95 an hour, depending on what type of plumbing it was. Gas fitting, you'd be looking at $85 to $105 an hour. Yeah,
Right.
this is in the Taranaki region, in New Plymouth anyway. And electrical work from around about $70 an hour up to about $90 an hour for electrical.
Right.
Yep.
So now you are back, you don't do it anymore.
If you had a business and you were charging guys out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So now, would you say it's the same now as back how it was in the UK? You know, the wages, you know, the money?
Yeah, well, I suppose when you look at it, I don't know what, in the last 10 years, what plumbers charge or gas fitters charge.
If you're a plumber in England or the
let us
UK,
know.
can you let us know how much you're charging?
Yeah.
So,
or in America, what would you charge?
Yeah,
if
what
you're
would you charge?
If
Yeah.
you're a plumber or a
or
gas
anywhere
fitter?
in the world,
Your own
India,
company.
anywhere. Yeah.
Charging you guys out, what would you charge them out at?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's just interesting to.
Yeah.
We are going to do another podcast about the cost of living in New Zealand because we hear so many times about how the wages are just rubbish in New Zealand, and we need to just have a good chat about that. We have sort of covered that now, but
the living wage, as in you have the minimum wage. We should know that. I think it's $22.
we don't get paid, so we don't. How would we know what it is?
Yeah, because Tess works as a waitress, doesn't she, Dan?
Yeah,
And
she does. Yeah.
So you have your what they call the minimum wage. I think is about $22 an hour, give or take $1. I should have looked this up before because they've only just changed it from what it was. But the living wage, which is what really you should be living on, is around about $25 an hour. So if you've got a job offer of $25 an hour, that's a living wage, not necessarily a great wage, but depending on what your skill levels are. If you're a tradie, you're going to be starting around that sort of money, around about $25 an hour. As a builder or a roofer or a painter or tiler, if you're working for a company. But if you're good, then you'll be up around about up to $30 to $35 an hour. Your $35 an hour, you'd expect to be the foreman of the site, I would say, with qualifications to do that as a licensed builder.
Okay.
So you do need licenses over here for most trades. Like electrician, you need a license. Plumber, a license. A plumber isn't a gas fitter, like tends to be in the UK. Gas fitter, you need a separate license. And again, that
Drain
license, a drain layer, yeah. So you need, it's a builder's, like you do in the UK, all the builders put the drains in for the house. You've got to be a licensed drain layer. A builder, you need to be a licensed builder. A carpenter, you need to be a licensed carpenter. It's not the same as a builder.
Right.
So everything is licensed because New Zealand's got such stringent building regulations because we get earthquakes. So your house has got to be strong. It's got to be certified right. If you're a roofer, plumbers can do roofing. They get an exemption to do it through because that's what plumber comes from doing lead work up on roofs and things like that. The good old French with a plombier. And a painter. You need to have a license to be a painter.
Do you?
Yep. You can do your own painting, but you've a licensed painter, a license to do tiling because you've got to waterproof everything properly.
So if you came over here and said, I'm going to start my own painting business, you'd need a license.
Yes, you're supposed to. Well, actually, no, I think you can be a licensed painter. Yeah,
right.
But you don't have to be. It's not, but it's about waterproofing. That's why you need the license.
Yeah.
So, if this house had been built, they come to sign it off is who did the painting? How have you done it?
Yeah.
And if it's just the painting cut, people did it, then they know it's been done properly. As in you've stopped everything, as they call it, and waterproofed it.
Okay, so this has been a really interesting chat. So before we wrap it up, can you just tell me what advice would you give to any new tradies that are coming to New Zealand to look for a job, coming into the country and working as tradies? What advice would you give?
Advice?
You have to give one piece of advice. What would it be?
That's a tricky one.
I'm sorry, I didn't give you these questions before, but
one piece of advice is like, don't give up, keep looking, and if you've got certification of your stuff that you've done, as in if you are a roofer and you've done an apprenticeship in that, or you're a plumber, and just make sure you've got all your paperwork, because you will need to put this in front of the electrical board, the plumbing board, whoever it is, that you've got all this certification. There's ways of getting around it to a degree. If you've been in that line of work for a long time, that the plumbing board will listen to you. So you don't necessarily need that City and Guilds if you've got 10 years of experience, and you can get references of people that you've done this work for. It is a way around of getting through what they call the NZ. Oh, what's it called? Oh, whatever it is, the New Zealand Qualification Assessment Scheme, whatever that, NIQAS, I think it's called, or something like that. So just approach the board and let them know.
As someone who owned a business, I know that was going to be my last question, but this is my last question now. This is definitely my last question. As someone who's had your own heating business and plumbing, gas fitting, all the rest of it, if you had 5 people lined up who were all coming for the same job, and they would all come over from either UK, America, wherever they'd come from, Canada, whatever, what would make you choose the person? What would stand out to you, as because you've been an employer? Yeah, employer in New Zealand. So what did you used to look for in people that were coming over as tradies and working as tradies?
The first thing is like, when you send me your CV, is what experience you've got. If you've done a couple of little cheap quick courses and like, I'm a tops plumber and what have you, I'd want to see what you've done, some pictures of what you've done. So, get some pictures, whatever you're doing, take pictures of it, and prove that you are in the picture, and take some, some selfies of a boiler you've just installed, or, some fantastic water cylinder or system or ecosystem you've installed. Take some pictures. It doesn't matter what line that is, whether it's electrical, plumbing, builder, show me your brickwork and stuff like that. You do need bricklayers in New Zealand. They do a lot of brick render on houses and things. So, there's so many trades, even if you're a hairdresser, you can come over.
Yeah, but what would make you just think, oh, she's the girl for me? See how I did that? Yeah. Not being sexist.
Again, you've open-minded. And not like we do like this in the UK. We do it like this in the UK. We do it like this in the USA. It's like, no, how do you do it in New Zealand? I'm really open to learn how you do it. And it's having that open mind, a bit like we were saying at the start, an open mind to just think, do you know what? I've got to swallow my pride and move forward. That's the big thing. And if you're prepared to do that, I'll see that in an interview with you, whether you're just like, you think you're the best when you first walk through the door. Yeah. And that's what it's about. It's like, learn how to do it here, and then you will be the best. The best advice I ever got off someone, we got the contract in this company that I started with the other guy. After about a year or two of working in that one, we got the contract to install the heating system in his house that he was building, a brand new house. So this is he was the director of the largest construction company in Taranaki, where we live. And we got the job to do his house. And he stood there with me because he knew a bit about my business partner. He was a little bit not quite as tidy as me on some other work he's done, but it's still good. And he said to me, this will be a job. I will be watching everything you've done. I don't want you drilling holes through wood and smashing the back out of the wood, and everything's got to be right. Your pipes have got to be straight and this, that, and the other. And 2 weeks later, when I'd installed the system, or when we'd done all the pre-fit out before lining, he came to me and said, "You've done an amazing job, and I think you'll do well, because cream rises." I'll never forget that.
So, cream rises.
Yeah. And 6 months later, I did the heating on the most expensive house built in Taranaki.
There you go. You see,
from that construction company. So be good at whatever you do.
Gold top.
Yep, gold top. But it's just be open-minded.
Yeah.
Yep. And knowing that you can do it, be confident of what you are and who you are, and think, I'll see this through. I'll get it done. It's going to be hard for you, but just
do it.
It's worth it. Because then you're here.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
Always
And it's
go home.
worth it. So remember, if you enjoyed this video, hop over. I'll put a link. I'll show you now. Go and watch the video about the 5 big mistakes we made when we first moved to New Zealand. And that might just teach you something else about what not to do.
Yep.
But thank you so much, my husband, Brian, for telling me.
I hope this has helped some people out there.
Yeah, I
about
reckon.
coming, working in a different country. It's not a bed of roses. It can be. You can just fall in, and it's just great,
Fall
But
in the septic tank full of
fall in
poo.
the septic tank and drill a hole in the bottom while you're there.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And
All right.
I hope you enjoyed this interview, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah. Kia kaha, stay strong.
Bye.
Bye.
Hello.
Daddy, I love him.
Mother thanks you.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.